Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer. Coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. What up, Shrubby Buddies, and welcome back to part 2 of episode 11. Small trees, big personality, how to use tiny woodies in tight spaces. I am host Matt Guthrie, and I am joined with my best good friend, Timmy Touchdown Fleischer.
Yeah.
TD Fleischer. How are you?
Good. How are you, Matt?
Good. So I got we have gotten good feedback on part 1 of this 2-part tree series. So that's exciting. That people seem to really like it. Must like hearing about trees. I know we like talking about trees, but other than the good feedback and stuff, you have a good week this past week?
I had a pretty good week.
Yeah.
You and I, we gave a presentation to some fine folks.
Yeah, so we talked to the Central Ohio chapter of the Herb Society of America at Enniswood Metro Gardens, which is part of Columbus's Metro Park system. You want to tell the fine listeners a little bit about what we talked about that evening?
Yeah, our presentation was titled Two's a Crowd and Three's a Party, and we talked about plant pairings and groupings. So
most, kind of specifically, perennial plant pairings and groupings.
Yeah, pretty specifically perennial plants that we like to grow with each other that help make one another shine. So
yeah, just make the whole landscape shine.
Yeah, it was fun. Good.
Yeah, that was a good talk.
Yeah,
I thought so. So is that it? All you had going on, pretty much?
Yeah, it was a pretty slow week. Otherwise, I know that we have a big week coming up. We've got a green industry conference, Cultivate, here in Columbus, coming up Monday, Tuesday. And then later in the week, we're heading north to the islands, and we're going to do a little fishing and just a little relaxation.
Yeah, the islands of Lake Erie, in the Western Basin. Yep. So up there, South Bass Island.
Get some walleye for the freezer.
Island. Yeah, nothing like a little fresh walleye. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Not a whole lot going on this past week. Just for me personally at work, it was like pruning some trees. We got that big Irish Fest coming up, the Dublin Irish Fest. It's coming up the very first weekend of August, so fast approaching. But yeah, so pruning a lot of trees.
Yeah, got to fit those tents in there, so you got to get the trees limbed up.
Got to make sure the tents can fit. People aren't getting smacked in the face by tree limbs, so it's not a ton of pruning. There's just a lot of trees in that park, so it's like going through. And
yeah, you and Kyle ran into a bald-faced hornet's nest, didn't you?
Kyle did. I was pruning on one side of the parking lot and just, singing a song in my head probably or something, and all of a sudden I just hear Kyle. He's like, "Run for your life!" And he's like running across the parking lot, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And he's like running across, and then I could see this like swarm, and he's just screaming, "Run for your life!" It was, in typical Kyle fashion, it was like over dramatized and hilarious, but
and he didn't get stung, as I understand.
He didn't get
which
stung.
Is shocking.
Yeah,
it was a small nest as far as I saw it afterwards. There was a small nest as far as those bald-faced hornets are concerned, but there was probably still quite a number of them in there, right?
For sure. Yeah, they got they were on the the lowest branch of a lacebark elm. So, but we got them taken care of, and we got it pruned, and it looks fantastic now. So,
good. Yeah.
You've seen Kyle when he runs into this thing.
Yeah,
it's just it's a damn trip, man.
I mean, he would laugh at you, so you must laugh at him.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's just another story to add to his book, Too Drunk to Die.
Correct.
So,
and he's got a lot of them involving bees.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you sprayed them pretty good, and then they took a ride through the chipper, so
Yeah.
they gone.
The old bandit chipper ate them alive. So, well, they weren't alive. They were dead
Ate
at
'em
that
dead.
point, but it ate them nonetheless. So, anyways,
Yeah.
enough talk about that. So, where are we at? Part 2 of Small Trees, Big Personality. I'm sorry. So last week we talked about redbud, dogwood, Kusa dogwood, or the Chinese dogwood, and our native dogwood, white flowering dogwood, Cornus Florida. We talked about dark towers, viburnum, and then we spoke with you all about some different maples that we liked.
And we did have a listener give us a little feedback that specifically on redbuds and dogwoods, they would have liked to have heard some of the cultivars that we like. And we didn't go into too much detail about specific cultivars, so I'll take care of redbuds for that listener. I kind of listed. It's hard to pick 3, but I would say that my top 3 redbuds are Alley Cat, which is it has a really nice open form and variegated leaves, lots of white and like lighter shades of green and darker shades of green running through. It's really stable, really nice redbud. I have one in my front yard, and it's reseeding a little bit, and the seedlings are coming true to the Alley Cat. So we're leaving those, and when they get a little more mature, we'll dig them up and give them to friends.
There you go.
Another one I like. This is another one with foliage color is Forest Pansy. And this is a super old cultivar that's been around, tried and true. It has really nice dark purple leaves. The more sun you can get it, the more rich the purple is. It'll still have that color in the shade, but not as deep. And its counterpart is Ruby Falls, which is basically the same thing, but it's a weeper. So that's kind of a 2-for-1 there. And then the other one, which we did mention, but I'll mention it again, is Appalachian Red. And this one has just really striking fuchsia pink to red flowers compared to the rosy purple of the straight species. So it's really neat when you see it blooming amongst other red buds. It adds a nice contrast.
Yeah, the Appalachian Red's bright.
Yeah, it's almost like you look at it and you're like, I like that better,
Yeah, there's those 3 at the one park you have, Veterans Park. And there's like 4 redbud trees all planted together in a row on top of that little landscapey cliff thing. And it's like 3 are just the species, Cercis canadensis. And then there's like one in the middle that's the Appalachian Red. And it is like big time different.
Yeah. So really, really pretty flower colors. So
yeah.
So, and you want to talk about a couple dogwoods you like?
Yeah. So we talked about Chinese dogwood, and we talked about our native white flowering dogwood. So I'm going to list a few on the Cornus Kusa or the Chinese dogwood varieties, which I prefer over our native. They just seem to do better, I think, than our native dogwoods. When you're trying to grow them in the landscape, our native dogwoods do great, like when they're growing on their own in the wild and stuff. But I haven't had as good of luck with them when I plant them myself. But yeah. Anyways. So variegated, one that I like is Summer Fun. It gets the white flowers, but the white flowers are just kind of consumed by the variegated foliage, so you don't really see the flowers. It's more about the foliage on that one. Gets beautiful fall color. Venus is a great, just giant white flowers, in mid-spring on the Venus, and it just loads up with the flowers. They cover the plant. And then the last on the Cornus Kusa list is Scarlet Fire. And this is like a little bit darker foliage, still green, but with just like a little bit of an undertone of red that kind of darkens the leaf up some. And then it gets these super bright fuchsia flowers all over it. And I want to say that that's a Rutgers University introduction. And I think that they've done a lot of the dogwoods that we see in the trade. And then as far as our native dogwood goes, one cultivar I like is the Appalachian Spring cultivar, and it's just a white flowering dogwood with a little bit more resistance to some of the disease issues that our native dogwood has. So that's kind of a rundown on some redbuds and some dogwoods. You got something to add there?
There you have it, listener.
Yeah. Listener. Yeah. There's some cultivars for you.
So let's start talking about some new small trees.
Yeah,
for tight
let's just
spaces.
dive right into this. So last week we left off with the maples. I think we were talking about Japanese maples last, so we're not going to go into those anymore, but we've got a few more on the list here that we can talk about, and I'm going to leave a few of these for you to kind of talk about because I don't feel like I know quite as much about them as you do.
I love all of them.
So I know. I mean, I love them all too, but I know that you have more experience with some of them, so I'm going to start out with this one right here. Mm-hmm. It's a native understory tree. It's our native pawpaw. It is the, what is it, the state fruit for Ohio, right?
It's the state native fruit.
Native fruit for Ohio. So pawpaw, commonly called, Kentucky banana, I think I've heard it called that. But just a great understory tree. There are some cultivars of it out, but yeah, it's not something that you would typically use in a more traditional landscape around the house because it is kind of a, kind of a native tree that will spread some, and but it does have this big tropical like foliage, and then it gets a not real showy but super neat, super cool flower. It's almost like a dark burgundy-ish purple flower, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, dark red to burgundy.
Red, yeah.
A unique color that hangs down like a little bell. You really got to be looking for it, but once you see it, it's a really pretty bloom.
Yeah. For this, you're planting it for the foliage, the size, and the texture of the foliage. The bark's nothing super showy. It's just a smooth gray bark. The fall color on it's just a yellow fall color, nothing crazy, but the fruit's fantastic. You can do so much with it. You can eat it. You can use it in baking. Rather than making banana nut bread, you can make pawpaw bread. They make pawpaw beers. Google search some stuff, but you can use it for a lot of things.
We have a pawpaw festival here in Ohio over at Lake Snowden, and I've been once, and it was a really nice time.
Yeah.
And so it's a real beloved tree, and it does have a very open, irregular habit, but when planted with more sun, and you've seen this in some of the parks, it does form a pretty dense crown. The only thing is it doesn't want to be in like the full blazing sun. It needs some relief because it's an understory tree.
It is understory, edge of the woods kind of a tree. So,
and it just gets kind of stunted and burnt if you have it in the full sun. But just a fun native tree. I
agree. So, that was pawpaw, Asimina triloba.
Got it.
So, quick little side nugget. I want to toot my own horn, but I used to have the state champion pawpaw tree for the state of Ohio that I found in the city of Dublin. Has since died, but I don't know.
Hence the used to. It passed away.
Yeah.
So
my name's not on that list anymore, but I have the certificate to prove that it was us.
It lives in our hearts.
Yeah.
So,
forever.
Good find.
Thank you.
That was an awesome tree.
Yeah, thank you.
Not super big around, but you've never seen a pawpaw this tall before. How tall was it?
Just shy of 60 feet. Just shy. It was like 58 feet tall.
If anyone's listening knows pawpaws, and can you imagine a 58-foot pawpaw tree? It's crazy.
So much fun.
That was good.
Right. Yeah. So what do we got next, Timmy?
So one that I like from this list is the white fringe tree.
Ooh la la.
So this is a favorite of mine. Now, there's a Chinese fringe tree. That's Chiananthus retussus. And then there's our native white fringe tree, Chiananthus virginicus. I'm going to talk probably a little bit more about the Chinese because the Chiananthus virginicus, it's a lovely specimen. It's more of a shrub. I've never seen it as a tree form, and we're talking about trees today.
Yeah.
But in general, fringe trees just have these. They're crazy. They're like, how would you describe the flower?
White, dangly, fringy. Yeah, I mean, fringe tree. It's
covered in these blooms that just kind of, they're so delicate, and they just dangle down, and they have a nice aroma to them. And the Chinese fringe tree has this too, but the Chinese fringe tree is the one you're going to find in a single trunk tree form. And I would say about 10 years ago, I would have considered this like a borderline hardiness issue for us. It's zone 6 to 9, and we're here in 6B. But now I've seen like our forestry departments used it pretty successfully, so I'm not worried about the hardiness necessarily, but it is the one that's going to have the single stem. The Chinese is going to have glossier leaves, slightly smaller leaves, but the same type of flower. A common cultivar that you can find of the Chinese fringe tree is Tokyo Tower, and it just has like a really nice tight form to it. And then one more feature of the fringe tree is that it gets like an exfoliating bark, not quite as dramatic as the paperbark maple we discussed, but it does exfoliate, and it does have little tones of brown in it, so it's nice in the winter time as well. And then the flowers are followed by these pretty large oval shaped blue fruits that can be fairly ornamental. So maybe like the size of a small grape. So.
What I love about them is they get loaded with flowers. Mm-hmm. You know, like they are a delicate kind of fringy flower, but there's so many of it. It just, you know what it kind of reminds me of a little bit is a jumbo oversized version of like an annual euphorbia, like that, you know, that kind of like airy, dainty type flower, but bigger obviously. And there's so many of them on the tree that it just looks like a cloud, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's pretty striking. And what's interesting is one of the nicest groupings of our native one that we have in Dublin where we work is inside the confines of one of our pools, but it blooms before the pool opens.
Yeah,
no one gets to see it except for anyone who goes into the pools to do maintenance prior to the pool opening. So I think that's funny, but definitely something you don't see as much as you should. Certainly an underused specimen. So get your hands on some fringe trees.
Fringe trees.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
One other side nugget. They're in the same family as ash. Mm-hmm. And so there has been instances of emerald ash borer infecting fringe trees.
Wah, wah.
Look at that. Look at you with the sound effects today. I like
Sorry.
it. That came from his mouth too. That didn't come from a machine. But it's actually pretty rare, and I wouldn't worry about it. There's a lot of research out there on the internet if you did want to get a fringe tree and you wanted to read more about it.
Yeah, it's not, the emerald ash doesn't attack them quite to the extent that it does an ash tree, but just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been found. So
yep,
cool. So we nailed fringe tree and pawpaw. I'm gonna oh, you want me to do that? Okay. Persian Perodia. Perodia persicaria. So very nice ornamental tree. I know you use it a lot. What's up?
Perodia.
Is it not persicaria?
No.
What is it?
Perodia.
No?
No. Just hold off on that
right.
for the Latin name.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to look it up real quick, Tim, because now you got me wondering.
Persian Perodia is one of my...
Perodia persica.
Persica.
Yeah, what did I say? Persicaria.
You're thinking of the perennial. It just didn't sound right in my ears.
Perodia persica. I'm sorry. Sorry, listeners. I'm an idiot. But anyways, so there are some different cultivars of that, but it's a great hardy, street tree, ornamental tree, under the wire tree. Gets banging fall color. It does flower super, super early. The flowers are small on it. I know that you just like every time it's like early spring, you're always out there looking for the Perodia flowers.
February, March.
Yeah.
It's in the same family as witch hazel.
Yeah.
So it gets those super early blooms, and they're kind of reminiscent of a witch hazel flower. A red in color, but they are kind of insignificant.
Yeah,
the
they're
blooms.
small, so you got to be up on it to see it. But if you're a plant person and you appreciate that sort of thing, give it a look.
It's a true 4-season plant
It
because
is.
you've got the blooms, which moves us into just a really nice, clean foliage. And then the fall color that Matt mentioned, it lasts forever. The one in my yard, the fall color is just there for weeks.
And then...
And it's a late fall color.
Not to mention it has beautiful bark also.
Exactly.
Would you call that exfoliating bark? Yeah, so an exfoliating type bark, not to the extent, again, like paper bark maple or, like a birch tree or something.
It's more mottled and splotchy.
Kind of like a Coosa dogwood sort of thing. Or a lace bark pine, if you're familiar. So
yeah, just it's a wonderful tree. It's in a great plant family. That, like Matt said, the fall color is just, it's kind of like what a sweet gum does. It can be like orange, it can be red, it could be yellow, it could be burgundy, or it could be all of those things all at once. So it's neat.
I don't know why you kicked that tree over to me, because I know it's like your favorite tree. I'm like, when you were like, hey, do this one, I'm like,
I've planted a lot of
what?
parodias over the years. I really, really like them.
Yeah, so Persian parodia.
Yeah. So moving on to which one you want me to do next?
I don't care.
Point to one.
You pick.
So I really like this one. So we mentioned in the first episode that we just very much dislike ivory silk tree lilac. So we're not going to talk about that one on our small tree list. The reasons we don't like ivory silk tree lilac is they're ugly. They have an ugly form. It's like a lollipop, right? It's like a big round crown on a stick. So there's just not a lot of personality.
They get a lot of dead in them too as they age.
Yeah, they don't look clean. They bloom real quick with these nice big blooms, which are cool. But then as soon as they start to like go away, they just start turning brown and they just
dirty
look. They look dirty.
Yeah,
it looks like a tree that hasn't had a bath.
Not to mention, 20 years ago, everyone and their brother was planting them. So there's like millions of them planted everywhere.
Yeah, and I still know people who are in love with them.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was talking with my buddy and boss at the greenhouse, Bob Murphy, and this morning on the phone for a while, we were talking plants and stuff, and he was like, "Oh man, I loved the first part of this episode." He's like, and he kind of chuckled. He's like, "And you guys really don't like those ivory silk lilacs, do you?" And I'm like, "Nah, like not really." But so why don't you give the listeners a good replacement for him here?
So Syringa reticulata variety or subspecies pekinensis. This is the Chinese tree lilac or Peking lilac. And so it's very closely related to the ivory silk tree lilac. But it has so many better features, including, let's start with the crown. It's a nice, open, spreading crown. It's not just the ball on top of a stick, so it has a really nice structure to it. It can actually provide shade. The flowers are larger and airier.
Yeah.
And they're more delicate looking, and I think that as they go away, they just don't look ugly. But the big thing I like is the bark. It's like a cherry-like bark.
Yeah, kind of that that mahogany kind of peeling, curling type bark.
Yeah, it peels off in really thin sheets, and they kind of stay on and kind of have these little curls at the end. And mahogany red, like a really deep, rich,
amber,
dark red.
Yeah.
With the lenticels, like the little spots that a cherry bark has are called lenticels, and that just adds to things. This is one we'll definitely have to put up on the gram, but the bark is lovely. So this makes a great little specimen tree, especially if you like lilacs. It's something you can add to your repertoire. It makes a great street tree. I know that we've got a few outside the high school there in Dublin, and I just always rubberneck as I'm driving by them.
Yeah.
But an interesting story, one of the cultivars available is called Great Wall, and I'm not sure how readily available Great Wall is in the trade. I know it exists. I know we've planted them. But Bill Hendricks of Klein Nursery was on a plant collecting trip in China, and he actually found this cultivar growing out of the Great Wall of China and collected it. Not sure if he collected
China
seeds or what, but just a cool story. So
yeah, that's a neat tree. We do have some planted, and I love it.
Yeah, so a good replacement for the ivory silk. And if you like ivory silk, then you like it. Then use it. So
cool. All right. So last but not least on the list of kind of like more spreading type crowned trees for around the house, pretty much everything we talked about, I think, was deciduous. We're going to wrap it up with heptacodium, or what's the common name on that? Seven Suns flower tree.
Perfect. Seven sunflower tree.
Seven sunflower tree. So for all of you lovers of crepe myrtle, I personally like crepe myrtle. I know they're used a lot down south, and maybe I like them because we can't grow it up here yet, like the big tree form crepe myrtle. This would be a good replacement to that. Beautiful flower. It flowers much later than a lot of things. So when nothing else is flowering, this bad boy really turns it on. It's got similar bark to the crepe myrtle, maybe a little bit more papery like, or like more exfoliating than the crepe myrtle would be.
Yeah, it exfoliates in like top to bottom strips.
Yeah. But yeah, and just an absolute pollinator magnet. Like when I say 18 billion pollinators on this thing, that ain't no exaggeration.
Yeah, I once saw 18 million bees on one.
Oh, you saw them too?
Yeah, and then there was 1,600 butterflies on the same tree at the same time.
Yeah, so we saw the same tree. But
yeah, what's unique about it, Matt said it blooms late. It blooms in September.
Yeah.
Which, if I know trees pretty darn well, and I can't think of a tree that blooms in that ornamental way in September. So
everything else is like getting ready to do its fall thing, and like
and this one's just getting started.
Hold your beer.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's so, and it is just covered in blooms, and they're just really pretty white blooms. And again, the pollinators love them. So
yep, and you can get them in a couple different forms. You can get like a tree form, a single stem tree form, or probably maybe more commonly found would be the multi-stem form. So something that's going to have several stems coming off at the ground.
And this isn't a new tree. If you've not heard of it, I'm not surprised. It's just not used a lot because I've seen a lot of old ones in neighborhoods. It's nothing new. It's just it's gaining popularity these days. I know so. I've planted a lot of them. Another interesting thing they do is when those flowers senesce, when they start to go away and turn into seed, the seed capsules turn bright, like a dark red. Yeah. And when I first started planting them, I don't know if you remember this, but everyone was calling them the sedum trees because they reminded them of like an autumn joy sedum. Yeah. And I do remember and that's funny because it wasn't the blooms, it was the spent blooms were this dark red. So yeah, a little, just even more, another true 4-season plant. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things that you've noticed with not all, but a lot of these small trees is that there's ornamental bark. And I think that's no accident. We like trees that give us ornamental features late into the season and into the winter, and ornamental bark helps check that box. So yeah, I'm always drawn to trees that have cool bark. Yeah, me personally. Too. Yep. You got to hold that interest through the winter. And so many times it's bark one, and then two, I would say maybe just branching structure. Yeah. Can be really cool, especially if you have some sort of lighting that can light that up. Exactly. These small trees are going to be up near your house, up near your patio, so you're going to be looking at them a lot. So having those extra ornamental features through the winter is a huge bonus. Yep, absolutely. So cool. So that kind of wraps up those lists of smaller deciduous, kind of ornamentally type trees that we bonus. Bonus. So now we're going to get into, those were all more open crown type trees. Now we're going to get into stuff that's more of the upright in form, conical, columnar, fastigiate, whatever you want to call it, type of trees. And to start us off on this, we're going to go with kind of a newer cultivar that's out. I do know some people that are growing it locally to us. They're not real big yet, but it's called Sting arborvitae. So it is an arborvitae, but a tighter option than like our traditional emerald green or
One that I use pretty often in lieu of the emerald green is the DeGroot Spire arborvitae.
And North Pole is another option that's
Yeah.
out there with these arborvitaes.
But Sting is just like 20 foot tall and 1 foot wide.
Yeah, it's like a pencil.
Literally
it's like
is
a true pencil.
Or telephone pole. So that would be a good upright option for an upright fastigiate evergreen type tree.
I think it'd be neat. I've tried to find some and I haven't found any yet, but I think and we had a listener say, don't talk about stuff that people can't find. And I get it to an extent, but if we talk about it, maybe that helps you drum up some interest and you can talk to your local garden center.
If there's stuff that that we talk about that you have trouble finding, just go to your garden center and just say, hey,
this is a proven winner. So it's not like it's just some real specialty thing.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest companies is propagating this and selling it. So
so talk to your garden centers and see if they can find it, and maybe they are unfamiliar with it, and it's something that they would look at carrying in the future. So
I think this tree would look really cool to create a natural fence, just planting them one after another, just right in a straight line, or as just like a single specimen or a couple specimens popping up through into your perennial garden, just kind of creating some height.
Or up next to the house, if you wanted to get some like vertical interest between windows without covering anything up, it's going to break up the house some with some green.
So really utilitarian.
Yeah. So Sting arborvitae.
Why don't you hit another evergreen since we're hitting evergreens?
Yeah. So we'll hit the Taylor juniper. So the Taylor juniper is another kind of upright. Upright formed. I'm just Googling here real quick a little bit about it. Let's see here. So it is a native. That was what I was looking for. So it is a native to the United States.
So it's a cultivar of
it's Juniper virginiana.
Juniperus virginiana. Okay.
Yeah. Taylor, cultivar Taylor. Columnar evergreen.
That's a lovely
tree.
name, Taylor.
It is, yes. My wife's name is Taylor, so
she's so sweet.
Native to Nebraska, blah blah blah. So 25 feet tall, 3 feet wide, and it's just got a really pretty blue-green foliage to it. That take on kind of a bronze undertone through the winter. So like a lot of the junipers and arborvitae and thing, there is some winter bronzing on it, which I personally think is cool. Some people think their plant's dying, but it's just winter bronzing, right, bub? Just winter bronzing.
Winter bronzing.
So, so Taylor juniper, check it out.
Yeah, so I'm also looking at our time like last time, and we are starting to run thin on time.
We not as thin as you think, because there's
some nonsense at the beginning.
There's 6 minutes of just total BS
of
at
me
the beginning,
burping into the thing.
So
okay, so
we're not
okay
-6
because I was just gonna roll because I was like, we're not doing a part 3. It's not happening. So when we're talking about upright trees, there's a couple that get really large as far as height. So it doesn't really fit this category of small tree for tight spaces height-wise, but width-wise, slender silhouette sweet gum is one of those trees. So I know that I can think of one at Dawes that's like 40 plus feet tall, that one in the witch hazel collection. Yeah. But it's so skinny.
It is skinny.
It's like, that one's probably, I mean, it's 40 feet tall, but it's only like 12 feet wide, right?
Maybe.
So a lot of times you see these in the landscape and they're more in that like 15 feet range by about 3 feet wide.
Yeah, 15 to 20 feet by 3 or 4.
And it's like one of the classic upright tight trees that you see a lot, but for good reason. It keeps that really nice form that never goes away, and a sweet gum gets incredible fall color, like we mentioned earlier when we were talking about the proteas. So, really cool tree. If you have, like Matt said, up against a building, I know you've used these up against a building in Dublin.
Yep.
And you can plant a whole bunch of them, and they just kind of create like a a line of soldiers just lined up around the building, and it's a really nice look. So
slender silhouette sweet gum.
Another tree in that same vein, and we're just going to go in general, is upright oaks, which have pretty much the same growth habit as said sweet gum, but they're oaks.
Yeah, so there's some of the cultivars I know are like Kindred Spirit is one, Regal Prince. I think just Fastigiata might be one. And there's one that I used a couple years ago. It's called Skinny Jeans, and I don't remember what the. A lot of these are hybridized oak trees. And
some are and some aren't.
Yeah.
Like I've used a Fastigiate pin oak before. That's just what's that one called? I don't remember, but it's just a straight pin oak that's a sport. But then when you say hybridized, I think it's I think the Regal Prince is a swamp white with a English oak.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I'm not sure what Kindred Spirit is. I don't know a whole lot of.
I feel like that one is an improved Regal Prince.
Okay.
So I think it might be the same. But you get the nice fall color from the white, the swamp white and the white, and then you get the nice tight habit of the English. But with oaks, you can, you might be able to pick one that can handle a wetter area or a drier area, and it's an oak, so it'll be very long-lived, and, I see these a lot in very thin, here, I call them tree lawns, so it's the area between the sidewalk and the street, and oftentimes you can't have a tree that maybe reaches into the street with the crown, and so you just have these nice tight trees. You can plant more of them because they don't get broad, so they work really nice in areas like that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
cool. So I'm gonna hit one more upright option here for people, and this tree comes in so many different shapes and forms. It's been around for millions of years as ginkgo biloba, or just ginkgo tree. And there's a lot of upright forms of that also. Some that get taller, some that stay a little smaller. So like ginkgo biloba fastigiata, or just a fastigiate maidenhair tree. Maidenhair tree, I guess, would be the common name for it. Although I think most people just refer to them as ginkgo trees. Yeah. So that would be one. Princeton Century isn't going to be as tight of an upright variety, but still, as it matures and it gets the height on it, you're talking something that might get like 10 to 15 feet wide on Princeton Century, if I'm not mistaken. What's another one? The one that I have outside of my house here, Gold Spire. And it's going to stay smaller in that 15-foot tall to maybe a mature width on it would be 6 feet. So that's going to be one that is a little bit more upright in form, but will fit into some smaller areas because it doesn't have a ton of size on it.
What's neat about ginkgos is that they're so tough. They they've been around a long time, and they seem to be able to adapt to anything.
Correct.
With urban pollution and salt tolerance and great soils and shitty soils and dry soils and wet soils. So as long as it's full sun.
Yeah, so a little side nugget here on the ginkgo tree. So we do a little bit of shopping at a very specialty type nursery here in Central Ohio called Danaher Nursery.
And, you mentioned them last week.
Okay, yeah. So Dave has, and Kyle that we work with got one. It's called Survivor, Ginkgo biloba Survivor, and it's like a very low kind of weeping, crawling type tree. That this is super cool. It's called Survivor because there was a ginkgo tree at basically ground zero of the Chernobyl events back in the 80s. In the Ukraine, and it was like the only tree that survived the nuclear meltdown. And after the tree, leafed out the following year, it started throwing these mutated spores all over it.
Doing all these funky things.
And but it lived. And it was, some plant collectors were over there and actually took cuttings from that and brought them back. And now we have this isn't one that you're going to find in a garden center. This is going to be like something very special.
This is just a side nugget.
Yeah, just a side nugget, but it just goes to show the toughness of the plant. So, there it was at basically ground zero of Chernobyl, and it was living a year later, but just in a very funky way. So, anyways, yeah.
It gives me an idea for we did a Survivor Perennials show. We should definitely do a Survivor trees
Survivor
show
trees.
at some point
Yeah,
with
I like
trees
that.
are tough as nails.
Yeah.
So the last category of trees that I think we're going to just roll through is our weeping trees. And I'm not huge on weeping trees, but for like, I've used weeping trees in like a collection where I'm trying to plant some oddball stuff, but I'm not a big, like, I need a weeping tree right outside my front door kind of person. I know that's very popular. But it seems like weeping cherries tend to be the most popular one, and there's just better ones. If you want that weeper as kind of your focal point in your front yard, because cherries, let's just face it, cherries have problems. They sucker and sprout from the base. They have tons of disease and insect problems.
Correct,
I mean, they're just riddled. They're just riddled with cankers and foliar diseases that can just make them look super ugly. And then if you don't prune, if you don't stay up on the pruning, they'll revert and the graft unions will grow and you'll lose the weeping form altogether. It's not the best. It's not the best thing. You can do better if you want a weeping tree. So I think we'll just name off a few.
Just a few of them here real quick. Yeah. And we can start with first one you already talked about today. It's a cultivar of our native redbud. Mm-hmm. It's Cercis canadensis Ruby Falls. So Ruby Falls redbud. It's a sport off of, I believe it's a sport off of forest pansy. Yeah. So, and it's, in that 6 to 8 foot tall range and weeps to the ground 3 to 4 foot wide. You can kind of keep that width tamed back a little bit with some, a little bit of intervention and pruning each year on it. But yeah, just pink flowers in the spring, early spring before it leaves out, and it creates this nice, pretty burgundy colored foliage, heart-shaped foliage.
What I like about weeping redbuds too is the redbud has such a large heart-shaped leaf. Mm-hmm. So you have these weepers that just get covered in these leaves, and it's much prettier than a cherry because you've just got all these heart-shaped leaves just kind of stacked on top one another. And
especially I love how the stem kind of zigzags on it too, mm-hmm. a little bit, and it kind of stacks them just right.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really, to me, this is a really good substitute for a weeping cherry. And then we have the Golden Falls too, which is another weeping redbud, but the leaves have like a chartreuse golden yellow color to them.
Yeah, and I think they may get a little bit taller than Ruby Falls. So if you have an area where you can get in that 10 to 12 foot tall range, I want to say the Golden Falls gets that tall. I know at least 8 to 10, maybe 10 to 12.
And it also depends, we're not going to get into the science of all this, but it also depends on how they're grafted.
Yeah, correct.
If they're grafted high or low. Or
yeah, because there's some low grafted Ruby Falls that are like that are ground cover.
Right.
But, yeah, and then there's weeping larch. So just think larch tree, but way smaller and weeping. So
yeah, I think weeping
a deciduous conifer.
Weeping larches are really cool. It looks like a head of hair because the larch it's a conifer, so it's got needles but they're real soft needles, and mm-hmm. they have kind of like a blue green color to them, and just the texture of it just looks like a head of hair. But what's cool is then they lose their leaves, so they have this really neat look in the wintertime too, with these like real long, thin, stringy stems.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite weeping conifers.
Yeah, maybe we can throw a pic of that up on the gram too. So, and then I'm not going to spend any time on this. This is literally just for our boss, Scott, because he, for the longest time, didn't think these things existed. And I'm like, listen here, you asshole. Like, I will show you where these things exist around the city, but it's the weeping mulberry. And And now that like he has seen them, he's like, oh yeah, they are like everywhere.
Yeah, they're pretty common. Weeping mulberries. They don't do much. There's nothing great about anything with fall color or blooms or anything. But they're just like a green weeping tree that's tough as nails.
Yeah. So cool. So that kind of that kind of wraps up the weeping options, and really it kind of wraps up the list of things that we, small trees, big personalities, how to use tiny woodies in tight spaces. It kind of wraps that list up that we have jotted down here. And I mean, we could talk for hours on this subject and list out more stuff, but
there's certainly more. But these are just our favorites that we wanted to express to you. We were thinking one episode, but it took two.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that we're doing okay on time. So, so with that being said, good episode, good talk. It felt good to talk about trees, and I'm anxious to do more talks about trees for people.
Yeah.
Trees are a big investment for people and their property. So giving them some good ideas of the right tree to plant in the right space so that they can, they can really maximize that investment.
And they can be added into your perennial garden as like a nice backbone or a place where your eyes are drawn to. So all these things work together.
Yeah. Until next time, I have some ideas that we're going to go over for some future podcast stuff. I know you've got some ideas too. We have got stickers now, 2.5-inch round stickers. So we're looking forward to giving those away to some people. If you need to get a hold of us, shrubby.buddies@gmail.com. Hit us up on the Facebook, Shrubby Buddies Podcast, I believe. And then also on the Gram, Shrubby Buddies Podcast. You can reach us at all three of those things.
You can get me on my cell phone at 8675-309.
And also I'm kind of researching too, because we've had a lot of people ask about video podcasting, and I'm kind of excited about that. I want to put cameras on us at some point and get this up on the YouTube.
So does that mean I can't do this naked anymore?
Not anymore. Yeah. Well, we could. I mean,
we could blur me.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. So, Timmy and I have a big week. Cultivate fishing trip, and then what's real fun is we've got the Perennial Plant Association's National Symposium creeping up on us at the end of the month,
and we're hoping to do an episode or two from there. So we need to. There's some people we need to talk to about potentially being a guest, and that's a little bit nerve-wracking. So you know, we got a lot coming up.
But it's going to be exciting. So we'll do maybe next week we can dive in a little bit on. This would be a fun one for next week. If you disagree, let us know. But maybe just like a recap on Cultivate next week, and we can talk about some of the new and exciting things in the horticultural world. If there isn't anything new and exciting, then we just won't talk about Cultivate. We'll just be like, yeah, it was whatever, and move on from it. But there's usually some cool stuff, though. So cool. I guess until next week, I'm Matt, joined with old Timmy Touchdown Fleischer.
Here I am, and thank you again. Thank you very much. If you're an avid listener, first-time listener, it means a lot, and keep listening.
Keep
please.
listening. Pass the word on too, because this is like exciting for us. It's fun every day to look on our uploading service to see how many people are listening and where they're listening from around the country.
You look
and
every
the world.
day?
Every day.
Oh, I look 10 times a day.
Yeah. I mean, multiple times a day, but at least once every day. And it's just neat to see where the listeners are coming from. I don't know, maybe they're using those IP blocker things and they're actually like next door to me, but it says that they are from Switzerland. I don't know.
Just to clarify, we don't see your name or anything, but we can see what
cities are
what region you're in, and oftentimes what platform you're using to listen. So that's all very helpful for us.
It's helpful and it's exciting, and if there's anything that we're missing or we should be doing different, please let us know. We want this to be as much fun for you listeners as it is for us to make it. I don't know. It's always a good time doing this.
And if you're one of our out of country listeners, like we have an avid German listener, Brazil. What's another one? We've had some Swedens lately. If you're one of those out of the country listeners, please message us. We'll send you some swag.
Yeah, message us on Facebook, Instagram, or send us an email, shrubby.buddies@gmail.com.
Get in touch.
Yeah, let us know. That would be really cool. Until next time, I'm Matt. Touchdown Fleischer over here. And we look forward to talking with you next week.
Peace out, Girl Scouts.
Peace, love, and trees. Bye-bye.
Bye.